All right. Well, welcome back, everybody. I'm hoping that most of you were here last night, and if you weren't, I'm glad you're here. And I think the session will be helpful, even if you weren't able to sharing the information I tried to provide last night. I forgot to say something last night that's really important. It is a quite a honor to speak to all of you as parents and people who may be serving individuals with autism, to take an evening out of what I'm sure is a quite busy life to try to learn something that will make things better for you, your child, and your family is honor is so wonderful, and it's an honor to address you for that reason. You're doing something that is in the best interest of someone you care for, and that's humbling. I certainly hope that the information that I'm able to provide assist you to some degree in finding a way of doing things that will really make a difference in the lives of the ones you care for. For those of you who might not have been here last night, and for those of you who were, I just wanted to say that I did make multiple points last night that I think I should just touch on in a global sense. I first said that applied behavior analysis is driven by the science of behavior analysis, and it is not a thing or
It appears that Mike is having
interventions for almost any area of human performance are driven. It looks what ABA looks at what a person does and looks at what they do in relation to circumstances, in relation to the environment. ABA works from the position that people are always in a circumstance that influences what they do. And it works in a way that if you do something and things get better, you're more likely to do that thing more often. If things get worse, you're going to be less likely to do those things. ABA can be used to guide instruction and evaluate instructional effectiveness. I think that's one of the reasons why I was asked to give this presentation, in order to make that point. The idea that we have to be sure that the interventions we're working with and on are effective for our children, because children are only children for so long. They grow up awfully quickly, and we need to take advantage of a window of opportunity that is provided by the educational system as they are eligible for free and appropriate public education. ABA is used to help build skills. It is a set of principles that must be done ethically and must be set up in a way that looks to honor the interest, motivation, and past history of the individual. ABA always works at the level of the individual in relation to the world that they actually live in, and that those ethical considerations are at the core of good practice in applied behavior analysis. So with that saying, I ended last night with talking about some quotes that indicated that ABA is effective and so forth. And I wanted to start tonight by talking about how applied behavior analysis sort of dovetails with the IEP, with the Individualized Educational Plan. First of all, goals on the IEP must be written in measurable terms. This means if a goal is to actually be measurable, you have to define what it is that the student is going to do. And how will one know they do it? So we're talking about behavior here. When a learner does something that is measurable, it is behavior. As a matter of fact, that's one of the definitions are frequently given for what is behavior. Behavior is what a person does. It's the movement of the organism in an environment, and it must be observable and measurable. So that ABA fits in very well with that criteria of the IEP. It means people have to be thinking about, if a child learns a concept, what is the behavior of knowing a concept? Okay, and basically a concept is what would be considered an extended tact. I haven't talked about what a tact is yet, but I will be doing that in the near future in this presentation. Basically, it's something a person does. A conceptual behavior must be defined as, what does the person do when they have a concept? Okay. In more general terms, if you want the child to learn to read, what is reading? You have to define the behaviors of reading. Can the child look at a word and say the word? Can they sound out the phonemes in a set of letters? Can they read a passage and then answer questions about it? These are all things a person does that must be defined in observable and measurable terms. Goals have to be written relative to a context. Okay, so you have to say, when will the behavior occur? So grounding the goal in relation to the context is important. And that is also part of the behavior analysis that's incorporated into ABA. You look at what will happen before a child does something, what will they do, and what happens afterwards. So in the situation where a child will learn to ask for something they want, in the situation where they want X, so you have to figure out, what does wanting mean? What is the person doing when they want it? They will ask for it. They will say the name of X. So when the child wants the phone, they say phone and get phone. Defining those parameters is important. And then skills should also be, goals also need to be grounded in a sequence of skills. You need to be thinking about what comes next. So you have to define skills that you're going to teach that build into repertoires of other skills, series of behaviors. ABA, although it is heavy in technical language, what some people would call jargon, that technical language really almost always should be translated so that you're stating goals and objectives in very measurable, pragmatic terms, so people understand what is meant by the goal. And if they don't understand it, they're not going to be able to follow it. So for IEP goals, you might have something like, the student will name 10 items the first time they're presented for 3 consecutive days. A very simple goal that says, when the item is presented, the child will say the name, and they'll do it the first time in the day. Okay, goals should be simple, measurable, and direct. And I'm not going to spend too much time on that. I think you had Alicia Adnapos last week, and she was probably covered that kind of issue in a lot more depth than what I'm going to do right now. But ABA and its focus on measurability, technical aspects of what does the program look like, what do teachers do in addition to what students do, all makes for a nice fit with effective education programming. So what are quality education programs? And this relates a lot to applied behavior analysis, because ABA can accomplish all the things I'm about to list. So if you have a child with a deficit or a disability such as autism, or skill deficits to go along with an autistic person having a particular pattern of performance, and helping them learn to do something would be important. We should be focused on those skills that the child needs to learn. Of course, we need to honor the child's abilities as well. That is central. But we need to be looking at what can we do to help the child learn skills that are going to be most important for their day-to-day life and functioning. And the way to accomplish that is through making sure that we are selecting clear goals that are well-defined in terms of the behavior, making sure that our interventions are defined in a way that teachers know what they're teaching. So you can't write a good educational plan and just say what the student will do. A good educational plan also has to clearly say in what conditions, meaning what will the teacher do to help the student learn. You have to have an explicit instructional program. If you followed what I said yesterday and what I mentioned earlier, that behavior change based on what happens after you do something. When you present a behavior and something good happens, you're likely to do it more often. That is an aspect of skill building. So there are many skills that we have been exposed to or taught, and they were only exposed to us 1 or 2 times. I would venture to say that those skills are quickly lost from our repertoire. For instance, when I was in grade school, I needed to learn a list of Roman emperors. But I have not thought or said the Roman emperors. I've not responded by saying Roman emperors for a long, long time. Hence, I can only name 3 or 4 right now. I don't remember them. And why is that? Because to do anything to proficiency, any skill, you need practice. And practice is actually doing something. What has been clear in educational research is that high rates of active student responding is correlated with better outcomes. So the idea here is that teachers should avoid, and I'll tell you what, I'm going to be honest with you folks. My format for these 2 nights is not a good format for getting across skills. I'm presenting things that are at an introductory level so you could hear them and think about them, but I don't think you're going to learn what I'm saying in 2 nights because I am not providing the critical step of having you as participants do something. That's the only way I would know if my content is actually making a difference. If you were able to say, well, here are key features of educational programs, and you can list them and say them back to me. Here is what applied behavior analysis is, and you can define it. Student responding is what leads to student learning. It's a critical aspect of instructional design. The other aspect of instruction is nobody does things very long that they aren't successful at or that don't result in good things happening. So we need to design instruction so that the consequences of active responding are improving conditions for the student. Now, that could mean, and I'm going to talk about reinforcement, the principle reinforcement is a consequence that increases the future probability of behavior. I'm going to talk about that in a little more depth in just a little while. But I want to emphasize that not all behavior will increase based on somebody handing a child an M&M. That most of the behaviors we engage in our day-to-day life are reinforced by natural consequences. Sometimes teachers have to set up situations so the child does something and meets the natural consequences that will occur. For instance, with a laptop or any electronic device, you want to access the screen and be able to manipulate that screen. You got to learn how to turn it on. The behavior of turning on the screen is reinforced when you push the button. That behavior is reinforced by the screen lighting up. Nobody gives an M&M for that. That's often a misunderstanding in what is ABA. Everybody thinks that ABA always uses arbitrary reinforcers that are delivered by another person, and without the other person being there, the child's going to become dependent upon the program. Reinforcement, while some behaviors do require that level of reinforcement, socially provided reinforcers through a teacher, many behaviors can be taught using the natural change in circumstance that occurs following a behavior. It's a good thing to look for in a good ABA program. Good ABA programs will manipulate reinforcers in a way that allows the student to develop access to natural contingencies as they come up. The other thing that's important in behavior analytic programs is the idea that practitioners should be honoring students' interests, personality, and skills. And what I mean by this is you can't push the river. The basic science of behavior analysis was used through animal studies. So B.F. Skinner taught a pigeon to peck a disc, and he taught a rat to bar press. Okay, he didn't pick those behaviors because they were just, well, I'll teach the pigeon to press a disc. No, he picked them because they were things that the organism, the pigeon or the rat, were likely to do. Okay, so that when we're looking for skills to teach children, we have to take into consideration the totality of their past experience, what they have learned to like over the course of their life, and also the idea of where are their interests taking them? How can we build skills that will honor what they may have interest in the future? It's an important, often skipped aspect of good programming. Another indicator of quality educational programs, they're data driven. And as I said last night, that's basically the criteria we use when practicing behavior analysis. There has to be evidence. We have to see some kind of quantitative change in the rate that a child does something. It's an important consideration. And finally, I'm well aware most of the world does not have a solid footing in applied behavior analysis. Most of the world doesn't understand some of the concepts I'm going to be talking about in just a minute, some of the principles. And as a result, behavior analysts have to, as do teachers, have to be collaborative. It takes a team to build effective programs. And to get collaboration, people have to be able to translate technical language into common language so that people can do the same things and do things consistently. Okay. Applied behavior analysis, as I said, looks at what a person does in relation to events around them. And it says that if we know that a person typically does something in this circumstances because this happens, we could change the rate at which that happens by making things happen more often. Okay. This is an analysis that's called antecedent behavior consequence relations. What is happening before a person does something, the antecedent? What does the person do in observable, measurable terms? And what happens afterwards? And what effect does that have on the future of that behavior? Okay, this chart, and I hope you all can see it here, is basically a behavior analysis in a nutshell. Okay, there are basically three terms in the antecedent condition that most behavior analysts will look at as their first line of attack of understanding the condition under which a behavior will occur. The first is motivation. Behavior analysts don't look at motivation as being something that is driven from within the person, but motivation as being due to a change in circumstances relative to the person's past learning history. What do I mean by that? Well, there's two kinds of motivation. One kind of motivation would be for something like water. I'm talking a lot, I'm becoming dehydrated. I've been fairly busy today, talking off and on. So and I also have a little bit of a sinus blockage right now. And as a result, I'm losing water. I'm becoming dehydrated. I'm deprived of water. Water deprivation increases the value of getting a glass of getting water, and therefore will alter what I do. I'll do something to get water. I'll take a drink of water. And the consequence then is getting the water. That's one way motivation works. When you haven't had food for a while, food becomes valuable, and you therefore will do something to get food. Motivation can also be looked at in another way, though. There are often things that I've learned to like that, you can't be deprived of. Like right now, I wouldn't sit here and say, oh, I have to have a pen or I'm going to dry out. Having a pen to write with is not something that you could become motivated for by being deprived of it. It only becomes valuable if something like this happens. Bonnie yells through the screen, Mike, you got to remember to post a quiz. And I need to write a note to remember what she told me to do. Therefore, I reach down and I get a pen. The pen becomes valuable. We don't need our car keys unless we're going to drive. So in a learned condition, when you have to get somewhere, car keys become valuable. This attention to motivation as being something that relates to the world around the individual is so important and is so often missed in educational programs. Teachers don't consider how the world around this child influences what that child wants or is valuable in the moment. A practical and a very explicit attention to motivation, and it's actually, there's a lot more to it than what I'm saying in this very brief presentation. This attention to motivation is something that applied behavior analysis can indeed provide major help to schools about, since motivation is often missed. Teachers don't know how to make things valuable for students. The second part of the antecedent, what happens before behavior, is a discriminative stimulus. So let's say I want water, okay? That doesn't mean that there's water available. In the situation where I want water, I look around and I see a glass of water. Seeing a glass of water says it's available, and I'm likely to do something to get the water. So if I held up,
new iPhones
something like this,
jack.
if you can mute yourself, please.
Doesn't
Somebody
work.
needs
back.
to mute themselves. So in the situation where I hold this up, and I think you all can see what it is, and I said, what is it? You might say music, CD, but music or CD would not have occurred until this appeared. This provides the opportunity. It signals the availability for saying music or CD. Okay. In the instance where I am done talking about this slide, seeing the button to advance the slide will be discriminative, will be an antecedent that leads me to poking it because it provides the availability of moving on to the next slide, which reinforces my behavior. Another aspect of the antecedent condition is the prompt. Sometimes behaviors might not be in a person's regular repertoire. They may not do them regularly, and they might not do them under the right conditions. When somebody needs a glass of water, they might not know how to reach for the water. So what do we have to do? We have to somehow assist the person in making that movement to get the water. A prompt is part of the antecedent condition that makes sure a behavior will occur so it could be reinforced. Those three aspects, and if we use a prompt, we have to fade it. Okay, and that's another critical thing that often happens in education. Teachers will help the student respond, and then they don't get rid of that help, that prompt. Okay, it's a very important consideration. Those three aspects of the antecedent condition lead to the child doing something, to a behavior. Getting a drink of water, getting a pen, saying the word CD in the presence of something they saw. Then what happens is there's a consequence. And the consequence could be some kind of improving condition. You say CD and the person you're talking to looks at you and nod. You say CD and it feels right to you because that's what you've said in the past. You reach for the water and the water's in your hand and you can happily drink it. Those kind of consequences are positive reinforcement. You do something and the environment change and adds something that makes your life better. However, there are conditions under which you do something and things get worse. That's called negative reinforcement. Excuse me. You do something and something bad is taken away and things get better for you. Let me give you an example here. So I am sitting here and all of a sudden my smoke alarm goes off. Woo, 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 woo. The smoke alarm goes off. What do? I jump up and I push the button on the smoke alarm, or I open the window, or I start looking for smoke. But my jumping up and doing something about potential danger takes away the sound of the smoke alarm. Taking away increases the chance that I'll do the same thing in the future. So you walk up to a person who's being grumpy with you, and they're grumpy and they're talking in an angry voice to you, and you walk away. Walking away then the next time you see that person, when you see them, as soon as you see them, you start to walk away. Walking away from that person was reinforced by what's called negative reinforcement. It took away worsening conditions. Things got better for you. It's a good outcome because you don't have to talk to that grumpy person, okay? Or you don't have to listen to the smoke alarm. It took away something that was negative. Another example of negative reinforcement is an umbrella. It's raining outside, you put up an umbrella, that's a behavior that increases because it takes away the rain. Okay, so another kind of consequence is punishment. Punishment is when a behavior results in worsening conditions. I think I'm drinking water and I take a sip and it's some kind of alcohol or something and I, oh, yuck. You know, rubbing alcohol, yuck, you put it down, you know, and as a result, you won't pick up that glass again, okay? You're talking to somebody and you bring up a political topic and the person looks at you with a skewed eye and sort of all of a sudden is going to attack you for your political views. You won't talk politics with that person in the future. It's in many circumstances. I'm sorry to say it's that way, but it's true. Those kind of things happen. Okay. Punishment has a real problem. You can get rid of problem behavior by using punishment. That's how punishment is defined. It lessens the occurrence of behavior. The problem is that if punishment is delivered by a person, it makes that person less valuable. And also punishment can become reinforcing to the punisher and therefore be used more often. In other words, if a child is doing something annoying, I punish them, the behavior goes away, that's negative reinforcement. And it makes me more likely then to punish the next time that behavior occurs. And that could escalate, because sometimes for the individual, it takes more and more punishment to get the same effect. So punishment is generally not a recommended procedure. It's generally better to look at how can you teach the child to do something that will help the situation get better, to increase the behavior rather than trying to decrease something by punishment. I'm not going to talk too much about schedules of reinforcement simply because we don't have much time, but schedules of reinforcement in ABA simply mean that reinforcement doesn't have to occur every time. There's certain foods I like to eat, and I'll use an example I often used in trainings before. There used to be a stand at Central Market in Lancaster where I live, run by some Greek folks who sold grape leaves, stuffed grape leaves. And I'd go and buy the grape leaves, and I'd buy a couple and I'd put them in the refrigerator. And when I'd get hungry, I'd open the refrigerator, take out a grape leaf and eat it. Well, eventually I'd eat all the grape leaves, or my son or wife would eat some, and I'd still go to the refrigerator looking for the grape leaves, even though they weren't there. Okay. Sometimes, behavior will occur even if it's not reinforced every time. And as a matter of fact, that's an important tool for teaching. Finally, one last point. Behavior that is never reinforced again will fade, and that's called extinction. I would love to spend the rest of our time together talking about these principles, because I'm barely scratching the surface of the depth of each one of these things I'm talking about. But I wanted to give you a quick overview of all those concepts. With that said, as I've been talking, I have been engaging in behavior. I am doing something. I'm moving air over my larynx, out my mouth. It's a behavior that you could observe by hearing it. Okay, I am producing vocal verbal behavior. And verbal behavior is like saying the word language, but language as a word seems to make it seem like something a child has. And in behavior analysis, we don't look at language as something a child has. We look at it as something a child does. How do you know I have language? You hear me. You see the results of my behavior. Verbal behavior, my ability to say things that specifically alter the response of someone listening to me because they've been taught to do so, is called verbal behavior. Okay? Language is something we do and follows these same principles. Language is so central to human behavior that I think we as a culture need to be highly attuned to how we're teaching children about talking and about how to talk and how to be effective speakers. For many children with autism, language is either very slow in developing, doesn't develop at all, or develops in ways that are very challenging to most listeners. In other words, the individual learns to speak in ways that are idiosyncratic. So that an emphasis on language development can provide individuals with a range of disabilities tools, skill sets that help them better manage their social world. Okay, we don't talk out of the blue. Language is basically always taught to us by a community of speakers. So in Espanol, agua. In English, water. Why? Why do Spanish people say agua and English speakers say water? Where does that come from? Well, it comes from early experience. When you're playing with your parent, when you're a little child, water, here's the water, and agua. Here, the child is hearing different words in the presence of an antecedent that then result in different kind of consequences. Language is really learned through our interactions with other people. And the interactions are first an antecedent, and they're also a consequence. If I'm talking to somebody on a conversational level, and I use a word that the person isn't familiar with, I almost always know I've done that. Why? Because the person responds. They look at me, they raise their eyes. In some way, what I said doesn't make sense. So this focus on teaching children communication skills can be greatly enhanced through an analysis of antecedents, behaviors, and consequences that are associated with verbal skill development. Now, I'm not going to go through this chart in detail, but these are different ways of looking at basic components of language. A man is a situation when you want something, you say it, and you get directly what you want. There's motivation. You engage in verbal behavior, saying cookie, signing cookie, handing over a picture for cookie, or pressing a button on a machine that says cookie, so you get the cookie. There's some kind of response. You want cookie, you say it, you get it. Okay, that's one way we say the word cookie. Another way we say the word cookie is you see a cookie and you look and you say cookie. In the presence of that physical thing, you say what it is, and then good stuff happens. Okay. Another way you can say cookie is somebody, there might not be any cookies around. You might not want a cookie, and somebody says to you, what's an Oreo? And you say cookie. And they say, yeah. Somebody says something and you emit a response that goes along with that. It's the same response, but each time it has different antecedents and consequences. These different responses, and the final one is a echoic. Somebody says cookie and you say the same thing, cookie. Okay. These basic bits of speaker behavior come together in complex ways to control all the things we want. Now, there are other important behaviors too, such as following a direction is a different behavior than talking. You're not talking. Somebody says, get the cookie. You don't necessarily talk. You just do something. I would venture to say that as most directions we follow aren't really true listener behaviors. If somebody said to me right now, get a cookie, in reality, I'd have to say, well, do we have any cookies upstairs in my kitchen? Are there, do I have to go to the store? I'd talk to myself, and my talking would guide my future responding. Okay. Imitation is when somebody does something and you do something. Imitation is a key way that signs are taught to children who are deaf. Match to sample, bringing things together that are the same. Textual is looking at a printed word and saying that word. Transcription is hearing a word and writing it. And copying a text is looking at printed words and writing those words. These are basic elements of talking in a simple way. The word cookie, okay? But for the most part, language behavior isn't that simple. We have things called verbal atomic repertoires. And let me give you an example of this. This is something that I hope you've never done. I want you to read the dark print on the screen and do what it says when I click my fingers. Go ahead, read that and do what it says. I'm hoping all of you did this. Doobie doobie dop. For those of you who have, congratulations, you can read. But hold on here. Have any of you done that before tonight? Have any of you read that word doobie doobie dop and clapped your hands? My guess is almost nobody did it. Well, how is that if there's this behavior analysis stuff that says reinforcement increases the future probability of behavior? The reason I'm showing this slide is I want you to be aware that complex behavior is shaped from smaller pieces. When you read the word clap, C-L-A-P, you engaged in behaviors you've been taught. You've been taught to look at C-L, app, and sound it out and say that word. You also have been taught to follow the direction clap. So when you say to yourself, clap, clap, you can follow your own directions. Those are skills you've learned in the past. You also know what the word your is. You've used the word your a million times in a million situations and things have gotten better for you. You know what hands are. And you can phonetically decode doobie dop. If a child could not follow these directions, we would have to break it down and teach all of those sub-skills so the child can do that. And this is where novel programming comes from. It comes from the combination, the building of small other pieces of behavior so that they build towards generative responding, being to use behaviors that have already been learned in novel situations. I don't know of another system of instruction that is able to look at such a fine, detailed way of teaching such complex things to children. And yet, often behavior analysis has been missed from schools. Okay, this idea of teaching a child to do things such as learning parts and features. This is a phone and this is a button. And then I teach shirts. This is a shirt and this is a button on my shirt. And I teach them all these things about buttons. Then I show them something novel, like this pin here that has a button on the top. And I can say, what's this? And they say button without learning. Okay, that is what we're looking for. We're not looking to teach rote skills. Behavior analysis is looking to get skills combined so that it's learned, so the child contacts good stuff for learning and then can recombine those skills in novel situations. This requires instruction that is tuned in to the way skills fit together. Okay, and these are some of the skills that can be put together for more complex skills. I could watch somebody do something, and if I'm able to imitate that skill, I could do it without having been taught because I learned the general skill set of imitation. If I want to remember something and I hear somebody say what it is I'm to do, I could echo that, and that will help me perform the task later. Learning the names of things can really help tremendously in a generative kind of way. I know this is, and that's basically what a concept is. A concept is an extended tact. I mentioned that earlier. What is the concept of pen? Well, this is a pen. This is a pen, and I can show you 5 or 10 different pens, and you see the essential features of it. So it has ink, it has a pen, you write with it. That's the essential features, but it varies by, does it have a clip? Is it blue or is it black? Is it green? Does it go in your pocket and so forth? And those concepts then become generalized. So you can see some novel pen that you've never seen before and say pen. That's when you know you have the concept. Okay. So remember that these ABC relations make instruction more effective, and that most behavior is complex and multiply controlled. Okay, I sort of covered a lot of stuff about good instruction, so I'm going to skip over some of these slides. I do want to call attention to the fact that ABA can be used to teach social skills because these are all behaviors. We can teach children to value, alter the motivation to value another child. We can teach a child how to talk so they can talk to another child. We can teach peers how to respond to a child who might not be as verbally competent to increase that other child's competence, and so forth. And I'm going really quick here because it's a complex subject and there's so much to cover. I would advise you to look at this slide. There is strong empirical evidence for ABA being used to guide autism interventions. And I don't know of any other intervention that has quite this degree of clout behind it in terms of good science supporting the practice. And I think that's true for most applications of ABA in education. There's good evidence. When you are concerned about whether somebody is doing solid work in the field of applied behavior analysis, you want to look for standards of practice. One place to find those standards of practice is on the Behavior Analysis Certification Board's website, and that's at the bottom, bacb.com. And you can look on there for all the things a BCBA behavior analyst should know under their task list. You may hear terms related to behavior analysis, such as an RBT. An RBT is a registered behavior therapist who has a high school degree or perhaps higher, and is a technician who works under the guidance of a behavior analyst. A BCABA is a bachelor's level behavior analyst who also must work under the guidance of a board certified behavior analyst. BCBA and BCBADs are both board certified behavior analysts. All of these certifications, all 4 certifications, require significant college education, significant supervised training for long hours before you obtain the certification. And they also require people to pass competency tests and maintain those competencies over the course of their performance. So if you're worried if somebody is doing good behavior analysis or not, look for that certification. But as I said last night briefly, that is not a guarantee of effective practice. You also have to be able to judge, is the person being practical? Are they explaining things to me in ways that I understand? Are they able to write a program that really alters in an effective way the skill set of the person they're concerned with? Okay, remember, one doesn't do an ABA program, one uses ABA to guide a program. ABA is not only about problem behavior. People think, and this is also promoted by the way many schools use behavior analysis, that they will bring in a BCBA to write behavior plans. And in my opinion, that is really misguided. That the real power of behavior analysis is in increasing effective repertoires, helping people learn to do new things that replace problem behavior. The principles of ABA, as I've been saying, apply directly to good instruction. There's no way around it. So ABA in the schools. Frequently, many teacher preparation programs, certification programs, don't provide in-depth coverage of the principles of ABA as I've been going over. They're frequently absent from education colleges. And that's a shame. Many teachers have seen the value of applied behavior analysis and have gone out of their way to learn about ABA, either through seeking out training, attending workshops. Even many teachers have begun looking for certification in behavior analysis. Teachers can be helped to receive this kind of training by doing things such as working with effective ABA consultants. There's also training opportunities available to teachers and parents through the Patent Autism Initiative and the National Autism Conference. Those options are free to you. And there are a lot of other agencies in Pennsylvania that have worked to disseminate ABA, such as the ABA and PA organization. The BACB does things, Pennsylvania Association for Behavior Analysis, and there are many quality agencies and service providers. I want to make a point here, though. Teachers, like all of us, including myself, do what we know. Okay, and we are all the result of the environments we've been in. We can't blame teachers if things aren't going wrong. Establishing an effective relation where teachers are set up to learn, to have the experience to be able to do things well is really important. I'm not saying accept a rotten program for your kid, but remember, if programs are going to work, they have to be collaborative. Parents and schools have to work together. And there has to be a technical side to things. There has to be a side where somebody knows the principles that are going to work to get good skills established for students. That is no small point. Okay, that is why ABA should really be a part of almost every educational program. There should be somebody there who can say, okay, when you do this, this happens. Let's see if it works. Oh, it didn't work. Here is another logical way of going about looking at it to see if it will work. Okay, remember, somebody saying they are doing ABA And I hear this constantly, oh, I do ABA. And then what's a motivating operation? And they can't tell you. If a person is doing ABA, you should see it in their practice. They should be asking questions such as, okay, how often do they do this? What are the circumstances under which the child will do this? What happens when they do this? What happens afterwards? They should be asking these kind of practical questions about how skills relate to the circumstances the student in, and should be able to show data that supports what they are doing. I'm going to skip these terms, maybe for another night. And the last thing I want to talk about is a note on managing problem behavior. Just real quick here. When children and students engage in problem behavior, the question becomes, why are they doing that? And from a behavioral perspective, there must be a reason. Things must be getting better for them in some way for doing that, or they wouldn't do it. So when we talk about problem behavior, it's really not a problem behavior, at least not in the moment for the individual. They're doing it because either it feels good, it gets some attention, it gets them out of doing something that is worsening conditions for them. There are consequences that maintain that problem behavior. So that if you're taking a good behavioral approach, if you're looking at not only what does the child do and we got to get rid of it, but the issue of as to why are they doing it, what's in it for them, we should then, that should logically lead to saying, oh, they're doing it because this happens. And when you have that kind of awareness of the circumstances in which problem behavior occurs, you can then set up a plan that reduces the motivation to engage in the problem behavior. Okay. So if I scream to get water, okay, reducing the motivation would involve a procedure by giving me water before I ever scream. So there's no need for me to scream. Okay. Then you're going to teach a competing skill. In that situation, what are you going to teach? You're going to teach your child to ask for water. And then when I do scream, you're going to somehow interrupt that behavior so the screaming doesn't ever get water. Okay. And by the way, you're also going to keep data on all this stuff. One more thing. I am not telling you how to manage problem behavior in this quick slide. I am giving you an example of how to think, how to use a technical process of looking at the primary aspects of the situation in which problem behavior occurs to begin thinking of problem solving with this. There's so much more to this, but as parents, when you're looking at a behavior plan, you should be asking, did the people define the behavior in observable terms? Did they look at why that behavior is occurring for the student? What happens after the student engages or child engages in the behavior? And what are the circumstances under which the behavior occurs? And then how can you replace that behavior with something that is effective and is not problematic to other people, and in the long term is not going to hurt the individual? Remember, good instruction in schools will prevent problem behavior. I've been in lots of classrooms, and I could say the classrooms with the most problem behavior are the ones in which teachers aren't teaching effectively. Teachers who set up good situations which children are going to learn and good stuff's going to occur have less problem behavior. Also remember, the student is never wrong. They're just doing what they know, and our goal is to help them learn to do other things. And focus on what you want the child to do. Okay. With that, I'm going to close it. And I know I skipped over some slides. Sorry. It's hard to judge how much time will transpire in these Zoom lectures. I hope I was able to hit on some things that are helpful to you. Really, the ABA is a topic that requires a lot more depth than 2 hours. I've been studying it for 30 some odd years, and I'm just scratching the surface of knowing the science. There's so much more to learn. So, well, thank you. And I'm here for questions. My email address, if anybody has questions, is micholasbct@gmail.com. And I don't mind people contacting me, and I will get back to you. Thank you, and I look forward to the question and answer period.
Hey, Mike, thank you so very much. Right now, we're going to end the recording. Shane, so if you can end that recording, that would be great.